Uh, the title I'll put up in just a second. No, I'll tell you the title. The title is Ethnological Science and Empirical Epistemology, All or Nothing. And the argument is in order to have an ethnological science, you have to have, it has to be accompanied by, include an empirical epistemology. One without the other doesn't get you there. We need both. So really, in a sense, ethnology has to include social psychology. There should be a bridge between the disciplines. There should be no break. I will try to start my PowerPoint. Whoops, wrong thing. And share screen. And enlarge it. And that's the title page. I will proceed. I have to read it because it's kind of tightly argued, or I'll read most of it. But I'm going to proceed through a series of 13 slides. 3 of them at the end are diagrams. The other 8 are, well, the other 7 are quotations. One is from Herb Lewis, and Herb can comment, and the other are from 19th century the Enlightenment thinkers who you've heard of, Adam Smith, Montesquieu, uh, Kant, and David Hume. But I want to focus on key quotes that present an empirical epistemology, meaning a theory of ideas or a science of ideas based on observation, not any sort of ideology. That's what they were up to. That's what the Enlightenment was. That's what actually kicked off the move toward ethnology. And that's what we, I think, have mostly forgotten and failed to link ethnology up with. And that's what I'm going to argue basically for catching up with our past. This is Lewis's quote. And my point is that he represents, I think, the current consensus now. And I don't mean that postmodernism represents the current consensus. I mean, Lewis does. And this view of postmodernism. I think I agree. I mean, postmodernism is problematic in the way Lewis says, but we should not take it as it's the headlines, but the article doesn't follow the headlines. And that's kind of the part of the puzzle. So please read that, give you a few seconds to read it. You've probably already read it. And then I'm going to try to explain how we got here, how this happened. Can I go ahead? I'll go ahead. Okay. The failure is the failure to link the empirical epistemology toward its ethnological theory. Let me comment on Lewis's remarks. First, the radical transformation is not all of anthropology. It only occurred in ethnology. The rest of anthropology is kind of doing all right. I mean, the other 4 fields. Within ethnology, it has 2 main components. One is the shift from science to postmodernist anti-science rhetoric that Lewis talks about. The other is the abandonment of social organization, kinship and social organization, that he does not talk about as a central topic. The 2 points are connected. The connection is critical. And the way they're connected is through Lewis's equation, which is, I think, represents consensus in the field between positivism and objectivity, or positivism and science. That's a mistake. Positivism was not science. It purported claimed to be science, but it was actually an ideology. The ideology came out of a philosophical tradition, the argument between idealism and materialism. And if you know the ideology, which you probably do, you know positivism is materialistic. Don't trust anything with any ism like that on the end. The Enlightenment thinkers I'm going to talk about rejected that tradition, that is the idealist materialist argument, and that kind of reasoning, ideological reasoning. And one of the key figures was David Hume. Hume was a solid critical writer, again, an empiricist, a skeptic. And his criticism, there are two big problems in idealism and materialism. There are theories of how we get ideas, but the problem is how to explain shared ideas. Idealism, the idea we can share ideas, is sort of the easiest way to explain shared ideas because you have a big guy in the sky, some sort of version of God, that makes us all think alike. Hume rejected the existence of God with several arguments. The other argument that actually has been better accepted and sort of saner about explaining how we think alike is materialism. Locke's materialism was we all think alike because we're all impressed by matter in motion in the same way. That is, ideas, impressions following one another invariably cause us to have an idea of cause and effect, and all of our other ideas come from cause and effect. Hume attacked this with an experiment. An experiment is hold something up, a book, drop it, it'll fall. Hold it up again, it'll fall. Hold it up as many times as you like, it'll always fall. Then hold it up once more. Before you drop it, before you let it go, think, can you imagine that it will do something other than fall? And the answer is you can. Therefore, you have not been caused, nothing has caused you to think it will fall. Therefore, Hugh Locke's argument doesn't work. It's gone. It's refuted empirically, experimentally. Then the question is, of course, well, why do we think alike? And Hume's answer was custom and habit. We learn from each other. And this is the quote that sort of is the key to what follows. Custom, habit is internalized custom. Custom is externalized habit. So custom then is the great guide of human life. And of course, for us, yeah, he means by custom, we mean by culture. But notice that there's nothing out there as an external agent. This is what we do. We are the agents, and that's Hume. Adam Smith was Hume's friend. Smith explains at length how we build custom and how we build habit by rational calculations and interaction. I won't talk about that. It's too complicated. And it's sort of summarized and codified by Kant. And that's what I will talk about. This is Kant. Uh, Kant said that experiment of Hume started him off on constructing an empirical epistemology. He called it metaphysics, but what he means is how we know things, where our ideas come from. And this is his response, in a sense, or interpretation of Hume. And I've highlighted the key point. That is, our empirical knowledge, what we individually know, is a mixture of what we receive through our sense impressions as individuals and what the faculty of cognition supplies from itself, what we learn to think about what we sense. Sense which impressions giving merely the occasion. This is the crucial point that subsequent theories of culture did not include. I'll let you read it for a second. And if something I say just doesn't seem right, or if it's not clear, please interrupt if you can. I don't know. I don't know if you can. Okay, can I go on? I can only see Tim and 14167. Uh, Kant then took, well, let me back up. Uh, the alternative, what these people are arguing against, is what positivism asserts, which is that there are four assumptions now current from positivism about ethnology and ideas. This is about ideas. Four assumptions are subjective and objective are opposites. This is um, Lewis's quote includes the equation of positivism and science. And this is the positivist idea. Subjective and objective are opposites. Objective reality is materialistic. It must consist of objects in space-time. Ideas are subjective, not objective, and ideal, not material. And therefore, science cannot describe ideas. What the Enlightenment people are saying is science can describe ideas, and this is how to do it, and this is what they look like. And the reason this is important is that is because social organization is important. The reason social organization is important is because everything we do in any society, by we I mean people, not just you and me, is done in title of we work together in organizations. So we do it in title of our positions in organizations. So the question is, what's an organization? And in general, our founders, Malinowski, Boas, Radcliffe Brown, and so on, realized this, as did many others, and realized that in order to get at people's organizations, you have to get at their ideas. The question was, how far do you go with their getting at their ideas? And all of them assumed at some point, you have to break off looking for the indigenous ideas and impose your own classificatory schemes, your own analytic theory, whatever it may be. That's what I'm trying to say the Enlightenment people did not do. And that's where what we need to follow them in and have not, almost not been following them in. The question is, how do you get to what their ideas, meaning everybody's ideas, what's universal in ideas, their ideas are founded on? And this is Kant's approach, this quotation. Note he's making an experiment. He equates it with Copernicus's own shift of perspective. And his last line is just crucial. If ideas come from experience, all of our experiences differ. We can't know about them. We can't, and we don't share experience. We share something else. If, on the other hand, the object conforms to the nature of our faculty of intuition, I can easily conceive, it's really not that easy, the possibility of such a priori knowledge. So what is the faculty, our faculty of intuition? And this is where Kant comes in. Hume I've mentioned. Montesquieu, I should have also described Montesquieu before I got to Kant. Montesquieu is the spirit of the laws, and he's dealing with the question that lawyers constantly tell you, or constantly told me, law, my boy, is just reason. Well, it took about 2,000 years for people to realize it wasn't that simple. They kept trying to equate reason with Aristotelian class inclusion logic. It didn't work. What Montesquieu shows you is it is reason, but it's a different kind of reason. It is reciprocal reason. In law, we describe social relationships, legal relationships, which are social. And what the reason is, the logic comes in, the reciprocal relations have to be mutually consistent with one another. So law must be socially consistent, not class inclusion Aristotelian consistent. That was his point. And also roles have to be consistent with the different social systems they're in. Government is not the same as family, is not the same as religion, and so on. And this is background to Kant. Kant is already responding to this. The Kant's response to Hume is what you is to recognize, first of all, as I've said, cause and effect is caused by what Hume says is custom idea. Kant rejects that. The question is how to explain where our idea of cause and effect comes from. Kant says we can't have an idea of cause and effect without an idea of space. And what we share is an idea of space. In fact, and he goes through a whole bunch of systems of different versions of our idea of space. And then this is his sort of concluding point. They did not recognize that this mental space, the concept of space that we share, renders possible physical space, the extension of matter. As we use that to construct for ourselves a world around ourselves in space as a form of our sensuous faculty of representation. Faculty means ability. Representation means presented to ourselves. So we have the ability to present to ourselves a three-dimensional world around ourselves that we use concepts to create. These concepts are social. We don't make them up individually. So the individual formation of our world is related to our induction into the social world we share with others. And that all objects in space are mere appearances. That is, they're not things, we're not seeing out there somehow beyond ourselves. We are seeing things we intuit with our sensuous faculty of representation. Intuit just means feel. So this is a crucial point in Kant's argument. And what he's telling us is our ideas inherently are shared. But we can also observe that they are shared. It's not that we have to just take an average of individual opinions. And this leads to, then the question is, well, how do they become our ideas if they're shared? And the answer to this is we assign them to a self, which we also learn to do. And we have to do this because otherwise we've just got a mess on our hands. So we internalize the idea of self, we use it to organize our perceptions, which are not sort of private, individual, subjective things, but learned relationships that we've acquired with our world, with others. And synthesis that I've highlighted means you build it. And then the key thought at the bottom is these are given an intuition, all of them to me, but you can't project that. You can't think that without knowing others are doing the same. This is the social psychology of Kant and of all the Enlightenment thinkers. It's not, and that's why subject isn't the opposite of objective. You create objective reality conceptually by applying common concepts to your individual perceptions, using them to organize your intuitions. That is what this positivist rhetoric obscures.
Okay.
And again,
before you leave today. Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're not, Russ, you're not commenting, right? Okay. And then
yes.
Tim should mute everybody.
I'm sorry. I want to finish this up and I'll get it to you. All right. Thank you.
Russ, turn your mic off. And this is the conclusion. That again, this is Kant, not me. That's my point. I hope you see that. And if you do, then you've got the 19th century social psychology that can be used, should be used, to underlie our ethnological theory that we have not used, that basically Boas, Radcliffe Brown, everyone else just sort of forgot by the time they started working on field ethnography. And you can't complete the field ethnography without tying it to these local concepts. And this is my conclusion. I will read it out. The Enlightenment analyses provide a system of ideas fundamental to understanding. These are the ideas that underlie our concepts of social organization, in including the idea of space. Noumena, phenomena. Noumena are things that we construct. They are, if we see a phenomenon is the table I see it from my perspective in this room. Noumena is the table that you and I both think we're looking at. And that, for Kant, is a projected entity. And he calls it transcendent because it begins in perception, but we think it goes beyond. And he also calls it hyperbolical, an exaggeration. The idea of space that we project it in, which he projects in many parallel ways, and is both social and physical. That is, trees exist in space, but in organizations, we constantly use the idea of space. It's not metaphors, it's social space. High, low, in, out. These are real things, and we move people in and out. We just do it not spatial, not physically, but socially. Time as an aspect of space. The idea of reciprocity is absolutely crucial. That's Montesquieu. Kant incorporates it. The idea of self, I hope I have shown you where that comes in, as the object that we assign our perceptions to. Self-other, because we recognize others when we recognize self. Reason, because we know we're doing this. Self-consistency, because it has to be done self-consistently rather than self-contradictorily. I, you, it, it's already there. And of course, derivatively, then the ideas of cause and effect. And very importantly, the idea of ideas. We all recognize ideas. And this was all part of Kant's system of critiques. It's also what Adam Smith's theory of moral sentiments is about in enormous detail. And if you go through that, you'll see he's talking about what we say to ourselves or think to ourselves when we construct ideas that we want to share with others, and exactly how far to go in sharing them with others. And that is, well, whoops, let me go back. Okay, now how do we apply this to theories of social organization? We use it to elicit the idea. We have a system for eliciting the ideas of that are used to create social organization. The idea is basically the same as frame analysis in linguistics. Wherever you have a set of systematic things, you can use a part of that system to elicit the others. And for kinship, this is the part that will work almost all the time I know of. This is what I call the core. There's always a self, and there's always a set of direct relations. In this case, this is the same picture for English and Punjabi. They're two entirely different languages. But you have the core picture for English and the core picture for Punjabi with the respective terms. You use this by, let's see if you can. Here's the self, there's others. Now, since every other is also a self, what happened to then I know that, say, father also has that set of direct relations. So I can ask what father of father is to you or anyone. I can ask what mother of father is, what brother of father is, and so on around for everyone. And I can keep building out the system and modifying the diagram that I get on the principle of one idea for one visual symbol until I get the full system. I will get the full system because I will arrive at boundaries. And boundaries will be of two kinds, one of two kinds. Either somebody will say beyond that, they're not relatives. That is, the so-and-so of so-and-so is not my relative. Or they will give me a rule like just add great, just add grand, and keep going forever. There's no other option that I can think of or that I have found. So when we apply that to English, this is what we get. And I hope it will look familiar to you. That is, people talk this way about English. The line of my ancestors, collaterals, descendants as though they branch out. And Morgan says the same thing. And we use this lineal collateral imagery as part of anthropology terminology. And in this case, rule one is just add great. Keep on going. Rule one down here, just add great for the reciprocal. Grandmother, grandson, great-grandmother, great-grandson, and so on. And rule two is cousin of a cousin is a cousin. Or, I'm sorry, descendant of a cousin is a cousin. And that's it. And those are the boundaries. There's nothing beyond that. Whoops. Okay, do exactly the same thing. I guess I want to allow to use the camera. For Punjabi, and you get this picture, which is totally different. Same exact procedure, different shape, different social space. And in this case, what's very prominent in Punjabi, mother's side and father's side. Now we can sort of talk like that in English, but there's no terminology difference. In Punjabi, there's a complete terminological difference. And the reciprocals in those groupings at the bottom are the reciprocals of the upper ones. If you go up 3 steps and over to the right one, the downward 3 steps and over to the left one will be the reciprocal. So you can compute all the reciprocals. And these are the total Punjabi terminology. If you ask, for example, whoops, God, better be careful about that. What the Purnana is father, mother of mother. And if you ask what is the ma or pa, bap, father or mother of Purnana, the answer is howls of laughter. That they're not related. And I'm quoting, this is not hypothetical. And I asked why, and people said laughingly, like I'm an idiot, well, they're dead. You can't have a relation with dead people. And howls of laughter. And similarly for down below, of course, if you're dead, you don't have those relatives either. On the father side, there's one more extension, generation. And the reason is people, when they marry, the woman goes to the husband's village. So men in their own village have a longer lineage to be concerned with from which they've inherited property. And women don't inherit property. They have personal, it's a different thing. The dowry is their property. So you have the same fundamentals, different social organization, and it works with everything Dwight Reed and I have been doing, I think up to probably about 70 systems now, and they all work with that core, and they all have different shapes otherwise. Note the issues. Space, of course, the diagram is represented in space. Reciprocity, self-other, self-other. Reciprocity throughout. Boundedness, they have, again, it's a kind of application of space, but it's also an application of logic. When you do the kinship elicitation and use the diagram or use the thinking of the diagram, what you're doing is taking the self-other relationship and transposing it logically into recursive computation, which gives this the formal structure that it has. And that kind of recursive thinking is inherent in not only all social organization, such and such of such and such is my such and such, but also in language. It's fundamental to language use. And conversely, of course, language use is fundamental to kinship organization. So basically, the point is, or a point is, if you include an empirical epistemology in the analysis of social organization, or in your theory of social organization, you can elicit and describe every kind of system of social organization completely without leaving indigenous ideas behind, wholly in indigenous terms. So that means you can learn to think indigenous thinking by understanding that basically at this point, we all have the same fundamentals. By all, I mean all human beings, as far as we can see. And of course, this is a test of that idea. If we ever encountered a system, a society, where this system of elicitation wouldn't work, we'd have to go back to the drawing boards on the epistemology, but we never have. So this is a rigorous, mathematically solid, that is, there's no guessing or guesswork, clear description of kinship, and I'll come back to another point in just a second. It's absolutely rigorous science without any sort of positivistic imputation, subject, object, or anything like that. And also, it lets us, and this is the final point, I guess, tie this to the rest of social organization. That is the way in which, and I have to be careful what I do, say every society has inheritance rules. You connect the inheritance rules to the terminology by saying which kinship position has what inheritance rights. If you have authority rules, you assign the authority to the named position in, say, a political terminology or a kinship terminology. So the rest of what anthropologists notice the rules of a society are assigned to these formal structures by convention, by assigning. So we have not only just a theory of kinship, but a theory of all social organization. And I guess that's really my basic point. If we, I'll read you my last paragraph because I like it. Okay. I've already really said it. So we can, in fact, have an experimentally demonstrable ethnological science. The postmodernist rhetoric says it is not possible. Here it is. So the rhetoric must be wrong. Quod erat demonstrandum. How do I get this thing off? Is there any quotation that anyone would like to discuss?
If anybody has any questions now, Murray's asking if
Oh.
you have any questions right now.
Read your final statement one more time, please.
My final statement. I'm trying to get the Zoom back. I think I got it. Okay, final statement. So we can, in fact, have an experimentally demonstrable ethnological science. The postmodernist rhetoric says it is not possible. Here it is. They must be wrong. Quod erat demonstrandum. Thus it is demonstrated.
Love it. Thank you.
Glad you love it.
Hey, Murray, can you stop sharing your screen?
I thought I was.
No,
I
not
mean, I
yet.
thought I had.
No, not yet.
How do I stop?
It's probably up at the top of your
Oh,
screen.
right. Okay.
I have a question or a comment.
Sue,
I've been
I'm still
going,
not, I haven't figured out how to stop sharing my screen. Okay, I think I have.
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
okay,
Sue,
I've been going to conferences long after I left academia, just to keep track of what was going on in anthropology and watch the whole POMO thing come.
all
And
right.
I have actually asked often asked myself, and I have no way of answering this, do ethnologists still do kinship and things like that I was trained to do? Basic social organization. Do they do that? I think there's some value in the postmodern position, in the sense that objectivity is a little bit iffy, and they are challenging the idea of objectivity, and I think that's a good thing to do. But in terms of everything, I mean, like you say, there are certain things that, pretty
Well, there are two
obvious if you
answers.
know
One
that
is
language. Do they not do social organization in any way or study kinship systems?
no, no, it is not that they do not. There
Okay.
are there is kind of a kinship revival going on. It's the sort of thing I'm talking about. Most anthropologists don't know about it. But the other thing is, and I skipped over this, the Herb talks as though everybody's doing postmodernism, and they're not. They claim to it. You've got what Herb says is they're in the leadership position. They're most prominent, but nobody's following them. Everybody's really like Herb. They know what's going on, but they're not convinced. And they sort of, well, there may be something there, and there may be not something there. Uh, Most anthropologists now, including yourself, identify with specializations. And almost all of these specializations do involve some kind of organizational context, medical, uh, health, development. And they talk about the organizations in that context, but they don't try to develop a theory of organizations. So that what we've got, the real situation demographically, is a small group of anthropologists are concerned with the general theory of organizations, and others are talking about organizations in context of the other things they do. The actual postmodern is the AAA has 40 sections. 3 disavow science. The rest do not. They claim to be scientists. And those 3 make up 25% of the membership.
Which ones are they?
The Society for Cultural Anthropology, feminists, and humanist anthropology. But all the rest are still wanting to be science.
See, one good thing about postmodernism, or whatever you call it, is that not everybody agrees about everything in that place where you live and work, that other place. I mean, I like that. I like the fact that they've really focused on contestation, and there are differences, and
Well,
it's not
there
like
are
everybody thinks the
contestations you can
same.
resolve, and there are contestations that are absolutely empty and worthless. And I'm inclined to think their focus is on the worthless ones. Science is full of contestations, but they have ways to resolve them. And I don't mean to say there are set ways. I mean you have to develop ways. You have to be intent on resolving them
No,
clearly.
what I'm saying is when we describe how some other people think about something, we actually have to realize that there often are different points of view there as there are here in
I
terms
think
of
you have to
certain issues,
describe the
not every
points of view.
issue, but certain issues are just debated. I mean, that's a fact.
Well,
And
that's a
that was
fact.
that's
So
something
you
that
describe the
wasn't
fact.
emphasized in the old social organization studies.
That's
all I'm saying.
correct.
Yeah.
But that is a new kind of anthropology to conclude the indigenous contestations.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the other point that I tried to make, and I didn't make it clearly enough, is objectivity is also indigenous. So if we want to see the way social organizations are objective, it can't be by imposing our ideas. It's by describing how they use their ideas.
Hey,
How do you
Murray,
use their ideas? Mhm.
how can you, let's say, if we were doing, back in the Boasian era, how would we, go about understanding or describing societies in order to produce a theory of organization?
I think you keep pushing. Misha Tativ does a pretty good job, and others. Uh, the Hopi have clans and lineages. Anthropologists said, well, if there's clans and lineages, there must be phratries, because a phratry is a grouping of lineages that makes up a clan. The Hopi say they don't. So instead of deciding between the two positions, you keep asking the Hopi what they have until you get the basics where you can make a clean elicitation from their terminologies, their fundamental ideas to what they tell you, including the differences of opinion that they have. So you don't stop and say, well, they must have phratries because they have clans and lineages.
Mhm.
And my definitions say they do. Does that make sense?
Somewhat to me, but what if we're trying to connect the organization of one society in order to create a general theory of organization, social organization?
I don't think you can do it by the kind of shortcut generalizations. I think it has to be how people generate their organizations.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no point in just trying to make a generalized description of kinship organizations.
Mm-hmm.
Who's in them?
Mm-hmm.
What we're interested in is how people create their realities, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we can get a general picture of
Mm-hmm.
if we push hard.
And that makes us relativists.
Yes. Is there a problem with that?
No, 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 no. I'm with you. Thank
We're
you for
relativists,
getting there.
absolutely relativists. And if a really good scientific theory should be refutable at any time.
Well, but we also are a community with our categories. So Lewis
Yes.
Henry Morgan or whoever classified different kinds of kinship systems, and what Herb's talking about is Tim is talking about is a theory of social organization. It can supersede any particular society. I mean, we're doing a generalizations about societies that we collectively have worked in and trying to make some kind of general propositions about social life and how it works. Like you're trying to do that right now.
I am trying to do that. And I'm saying you have to work from their most basic ideas and seeing how they
Yeah,
build them up.
you have to
You
really
can't
understand the
generalize just about
societies
the
deeply.
outcomes.
Yeah.
If
Yeah,
I
you generalize.
understand
And
you,
other people have said this, you generalize about the process.
if
not
I
the result.
understand you, Murray, it is not us putting ideas on top of it. It is sitting back and listening
Yes.
and processing and trying to come up with a system that is consistent with what people are telling us and we are observing them doing.
Yes.
Right.
But I think we all should be able to explain what we find to the people we're describing, and they should be able to agree. That doesn't mean I have
Oh,
to be
yeah.
able to teach them symbolic logic, but I have to give some sort of rational explanation.
Yeah, but essentially what it means is us keeping our thinking out of it.
That's Tim quoted me. It requires careful self-restraint. I forget exactly what I said, but yeah, don't impute.
But this is
Learn,
what I
listen.
learned in a methods class with Margaret Mead back in the 1950s.
Yeah, of course you
And I
did.
am still there, and I still think she was right, you're right.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's what I do.
Oh, it's learning how to listen, no question about it, and what to listen for. But you should, when I do an elicitation, and I've now done many, uh, if the result, I get a diagram, and people say, "What's that?" I would really worry. What the first time I did it in Punjab, I had the diagram laying out on my table, and a smartass came in to expose me for what I was as some sort of spy. And he looked at the diagram and he said, "You're saying you came here to learn that?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Everybody knows that." Nobody would
Exactly.
travel around the world to do that. And that's exactly the kind of confirmation I wanted.
Dennis, did you have a question, comment?
Yes.
Yes, very. I found, well, this whole discussion is also very interesting. And, you know, each of us have our own career trajectories, and we have our own models, we all have our own categories, our own paradigms,
Free yourself.
That's more of a contemporary word for all of this. Maybe it's even an old word. But Mary, on your kinship charts that you gave as evidence, the two examples you gave were primarily um, monogamous, unilineal kind of organizations.
Yes.
And so I've had a good amount of
Well, no,
experience.
I take it back. Punjabi is not unilineal.
Well, the direct line, mother, father, child, son.
Yeah, but mother's side, father's side.
Yeah. So let me get to my point.
Yeah.
And so I've used that kind of a chart, those symbols, in a lot of my field work. Um, and I find that it's so much more complex in the sense of as people age and there's divorces and there's deaths and there's multiple partners and multiple marriages. And also many societies of the world are not monogamous, but they're polygynous. So could you give us an example of how your basic theory of explanation applies to those more complex kinship
Sure.
organizations?
They're not more complex.
Share that with us. Share that with me.
Yeah.
How your simple model explains the complexities.
Yes, exactly. You attach the rules to the positions. So there is a spouse position, and the rule can be there can be more than one person occupying that position.
Exactly.
And then the rest of the rule will be how do they use the terminology? And I would expect it to be the same. That is, they would call their descendants by the same terms as other people call their descendants. But the way in which the basic concepts of the terminology produce organizations on the ground when instantiated depends on the rules that are attached to those positions. And those can vary. In Punjabi language, the same terminology is used by Muslims in Pakistan and Hindus and Sikhs and Muslims in India with slightly different rules about, say, inheritance and marriage and family structure. That's only the framework. That is like the skeleton. The rest of the flesh, I didn't have time to provide. But that's what you're talking about is the other stuff that's attached
Yeah.
to that framework.
And so this idea of applying the ancestor generation with the word grand,
Yes.
how does that apply when you have so many different family so many grand how many there's so many marriages
Yes.
and complexities there but your chart makes it look so simple with the like a unilineal line
The
between two
chart is
people,
simple.
but
And
actually it
the
turns
idea,
out to be dozens of people,
yes, that's the beauty of it. That's exactly the point. These are generative systems. The
Mhm.
concepts are simple. There's only one great grandfather concept. But by the logic of the chart itself, you can have many four great grandparents, eight great great grandparents. But that's built into the logic of the chart itself.
Mhm.
By that, my father's father is so and so. My father's father's father is so and so. So
Mhm.
the chart is a system of computations of related concepts, which implies computations. How you use the computations is what produces the demographic type groups, the household groups. And that can be, there's rules of household. In Punjabi, as I sort of mentioned in passing, the rule is men only inherit. Women do not. Women inherit nothing. But on the other hand, when a woman is married, if you ask, a lot of money is spent on what's in the West is called the dowry. So my question often always was, how do you decide how much this can be? And the answer always was, you can't put a price on her daughter. But the other answer was, it's about the same as what they would get if they were a boy.
Mm.
The answer in practice. So that again, the framework is there. Now, Muslim marriage rule is quite different, property rule, because women do get half the property of a man. So that has a whole different other set of implications.
Could I
But
say
that's
something?
exactly where Montesquieu comes in, where the whole Enlightenment analysis comes in, but especially Montesquieu. You have to think of the logic that's built into the diagram, that's built into the spatial representation of the diagram. You can't immediately just assume the diagram represents a group on the ground. You have to see how it's used to build relations that turn into groups on the ground.
All right, thank you, Murray.
All right,
I hope
Thopper,
it
go
works.
ahead.
Okay, this is what is fascinating to me in terms of this idea of organization. At least in the place I spent most of my time, which is the small or a town in Tunisia. I spent most of my time there. Is that no matter how it's organized, no matter what you say the organization is, if you're a master of your culture or you're at an up close level, there seems to always be a way to make it work the way you want it to work.
Yeah.
You take that, your organization, even if you agree with what it is, somehow there's always a way to deal with it the way you want it to come out.
Yeah.
Not the thing about the inheritance thing reminded me that near the end of the time that I was there, I think almost the last time in 2012, I started saying something because someone had died. There was an inheritance thing, and I started talking about how women only inherit half of what men inherit.
Right.
And then all the women jumped on me and they said, "Shut up, Sabra," because they benefit from what the man brings in. You
Yes.
know, they don't. It was a situation where it was much better if the women only inherited half, because those women were getting all of what their uncle or brother or spouse was getting, and so there's always a way there's always, in terms of development, there's always a way, it seems to me, to change things, to re-verbalize, I guess, what the, well, okay, some anthropologists came to my town. Architects came to my town because they were going to build for our kindergarten when I was in the Peace Corps. They were going to build playground equipment for us. Okay, well, there's nothing, especially back in that time, because that was 60, beginning of 67. You can't just let a bunch of guys come and stay in the house with you, right? So we were living with a family. We had sort of our quarters and their quarters. And the woman, the mother in the family, was she could always make things work how would be best, even if it wasn't the iterated way of how the organization worked. So one of the things that happened was these young men, these architects, became our cousins. And she said it was so, until this day, some people still ask me, how is that redheaded cousin of yours doing? And I think that's part of the thing that is fascinating to me is how things are, and probably many people knew that those were not cousins, or these architects were not cousins. So I don't know, it's just so fascinating, and I'm not sure. They always upset the organization, but only they don't.
Well, I don't think
by going along with it, but making it work for them.
Well, this
they
is
can
back to
leave.
Sue's point. All realities are contested. The problem is to get the ideas that are being used to contest the realities.
Right. Well, I think sometimes you go along to get along. Sometimes this for example, to contest the ideas.
Yeah.
Well, because people don't agree. Obviously, they don't agree. This was
Oh, they can, sure.
So how do they deal with something like if you believe in Jinn, for example?
Yeah.
He's Jinn, and other people don't agree and even think it's a silly idea. Then I saw that they tell a story that's a true story. Then someone else and the Jinn are there. And then they tell another story where the whole thing was just in some ways was made a funny story about the Jinn. So as if they didn't, and both stories are good, and nobody tries to argue outside the stories.
Let me make a point back for Kant. He never said people believe these fundamental ideas. They just use them. They're established in consensus. And they will agree that they're established in consensus, but then they'll argue about them. But I can elicit the kinship ideas, and then other people can argue about it. And Steve Lyon actually has a system of a bunch of immigrants down near Honduras where people don't agree on kinship ideas. There is a disagreement within what they agree on. That is, they agree that they don't have a settled system. But you still can, the fundamental relationship is we make our own consciousness, our own operating reality, using ideas we know to be shared. And in doing that, in communicating, we also are creating those shared ideas. And we have in every society ways of being very clear about what ideas are really shared, are common. We represent them in ceremonies. We may then argue about whether the ceremony was done properly, but that's the ceremony. That's the text that describes it. That's the rules. By written rules, and people will agree on what they are, but disagree on how to apply them.
Okay,
And that becomes contested. But my point is, that's what anthropologists should be explaining,
Okay.
not pretending it's not happening.
I mean, I think it's fascinating to mess around with this idea because but there's also, in terms of organization, the big problem, like we have the problem with immigration right now. Okay. There's whole layers. There's the, I would call it more like the common law idea of immigration and the law idea of whatever that.
Yeah.
So everybody was going along following the sort of the common law idea of immigration, how you can become a citizen, how you can stay in the country, how you can, I could use sports for another example, but I'll use it, but this one's so evident right now. Then no one seems to realize that there were two sets of rules, kind of, and everybody was going along agreeing with that one set of rules that meant you could stay because of this, because you're a dreamer, because you know you've never actually lived anyplace else, and you work your way through that thing and you show up. You don't show up and then get arrested, right? But that's the other law if you take it in another way.
But all that is what we should be able to describe. And if you don't pay attention to indigenous ideas, you can't.
But which is the organization? I mean, there's two organizations.
It is, as Sue said,
There
as
are
you've
two
been
sets
saying,
of rules
contested.
there.
It's dynamic, it's process.
I'm just saying some people can handle actually sort of living with two organizations.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
that's what we're doing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or some people are, but then other people only are just.
All of this is true. All of this is what anthropology ought to be able to deal with in a coherent way, not as an exception to what we're contending.
Well, then how deep are we going to get into this organization?
Entirely to the bottom.
I
Absolutely.
mean, you
to
might
the
have
bottom.
to just move in and stay there forever.
Yes. I'll tell you a story very quickly. When I got back from Punjab, when I was still in Punjab, my research proposal called for staying for 2 years. After about 16, I guess 16 months, I got an angry, sort of urgent sounding telegram from Dave Schneider. Come home immediately. There had just been a war. I wasn't quite finished. I decided to ignore it, and I finished. My project included, my proposal included finishing the dissertation in the field and reading it out to the people to let them check it. I got home, I had the dissertation. They had checked it in the field, plunked it down on Schneider's desk. He looked a little alarmed, but didn't say anything. He read it. After a couple of weeks, I came back and talked to him. And I guess this was the first time when I plunked it down. And we talked for a bit, and he didn't explain what the telegram was about. I kept waiting. He kept not explaining. So finally I asked, and his response was, "We thought you were going native."
That's
And
terrible.
my
The
response,
best thing
which I
you
did
could
not
have done.
articulate, what?
You know, I've seen people that stayed so long that they could not write a dissertation in.
Well, my problem is not to not go native, it's to figure out how I did it. And I think that's our job. Yes, become an effective native, more or less, as best you can, but figure out how you did it. And that's what this is describing. You learn the ideas and learn them to the fundamentals well enough that you can act in indigenous terms. And
Hey, Murray, what is it that
more
Herb
basic
got,
than that.
what is it that Herb got wrong then? That was one of your first.
Equating positivism, positivist idea is you create the objectivity. If you, in the empirical, the fact is they create the objectivity, and you have to learn their way of doing it.
Okay.
I want to break in, but I'm a number. Anybody know how to remove the number? And be a person?
Go ahead and talk.
Thank you. But my name's Penny Van Estrik. I'm not 1114167.
Yeah.
All this reminds me of what I thought my anthropology was going to be all about. And that was basically cognitive anthropology.
Right.
And that's how I interpret a lot of what you've been saying.
Yes.
And I think it's very, very basic to the way I do ethnography. But what happened to cognitive anthropology? It fell apart before postmodernism came in. In other words, it was somehow it was transformed and dissipated long before we got into the postmodern arguments. And I don't see. Yeah, I was curious what you think about that, because Herb Lewis didn't address that particular piece of a theoretical direction, which just seemed to fade out.
Well, cognitive anthropology, insofar as it grew out of ethnoscience, was positivist in ideology. And that part faded out because they didn't want to talk about ideas. But those people who, the ones who are still alive and their descendants, are now talking about ideas. So they're sort of moving in this direction, but they still think ideas are inside of people, and they have to get them by kind of averaging people's responses. And
But they were dealing with computation of rules and transformations,
yes,
ideas, and great attention to semantic details as well.
well, I think people still are. I think this is the same thing as I'm saying when I say social psychology.
I do too.
It has to be there.
Yeah.
And the descendants of the ethnoscience cum cognitive anthropology people are still there, a minority, and moving in this direction. But they're not they haven't gotten there yet. But yeah, were other people, not in the same group exactly, who we're talking about decision rules.
Mhm.
And I think this does bring it all together. That is, looking at indigenous ideas in the Enlightenment framework, in the framework of an empirical epistemology. Forget subject versus object. Forget materialism versus idealism. Look at the facts. Let facts explain facts. Start with what you elicit. Hello, Alice.
Keep on thinking that you all ought to come to my house. On Labor Day, I got new roomers, a young married couple who are very strict Bangladeshi Muslims. He, Abul, cannot touch me. I cannot shake his hand. I have to stay away. His bride, who arrived in this country, marriage, last November. Incidentally, both of them speak perfect English very fluently because it's taught in Bangladeshi schools. It is the lingua franca. So don't have that problem. But I am like doing ethnography, like it or not. I feel very much I'm in the field. When, for example, last night, I went into the kitchen to make my supper, and they were sitting on the floor in the middle of the kitchen, eating their fingers. Didn't occur to them that I might want to walk about the kitchen, and I didn't move. I was stepping over, pardon me, it's constant being in the field, because I obviously want to be hospitable, don't want to disturb them. And they are so strict. But a flip side of that is they just came back from a 10-day trip to Mecca. They went on the Hajj. Now I know there is kind of like a junior Hajj for young people. So now this bride, 20 years old, who can only take off some of her layers of cloth. It's just me in the house and her husband. Now I can address both of them as Haj. Haj? Yeah. So this is the kind of the reverse of what everybody is thinking about. Your one's experience, including mine, out in the field, not at home. Just try being in your own home where you are hosting an extremely different culture. And it really highlights a great deal of the experience of doing ethnography. Because, I mean, I don't have a choice. I can't go to my room someplace. To get to my room upstairs, I have to go past where they are. So it's a reverse kind of experience. But at the same time, one of the things that has really struck me is Abul is the third Muslim young man in Milwaukee who, I should say, Abul is finishing mechanical engineering PhD at UW Milwaukee. That's why he's here. And when he married, he needed a place for him to stay with his bride, different from the room he had. So anyway, that's why they came here. Made it interesting for me. But so he is the third Milwaukee Muslim man I've had since 2017, one after the other. And one of the things that I introduce them to is the word cousin brother. They were having a problem explaining to other Americans the relationship whereby, in this case right now, everybody with the surname Hassan and they're Bangladeshi are cousin brother. Cousin brother is a term that American First Nations have been using because you have generation kinship system among Blackfoot, for example, and cousin / brother, but you say it as one word, has actually been in actual use. These Muslim young people are delighted that there's one word instead of making a sentence out of the relation with this person or that person. But what I'm getting out of this, kind of like it or not, is how superficial these organizational charts are compared to the way people move and do things and express things, keeping certain boundaries in Abul's case so extreme, cannot touch any woman, even though he calls me grandma, still can't touch me. Versus that very, very Enlightenment and very, very Western European thing of making a chart out of it. It's just like two different worlds. And the chart world goes back to Morgan and his astonishment as a lawyer who handled a lot of kinship issues like inheritance there in Rochester, New York. So a lot of his business was with this. And he found out that when he started standing on that steamship up the Missouri and asking the First Nations passengers, "There's nothing else to do. Would you tell me the names of your, what do you call?" And when he got these charts, they weren't like the lawyers have for kinship.
Right.
And Morgan's assumption, like every other Westerner, was this is natural. And then Morgan discovered it's not. And that started your whole enterprise of kinship systems. But, you know, several of you have already brought it up and emphasized. People work around. They don't necessarily even talk about it, but they work around what you might extract as a chart. And I think that that is far more interesting than making these charts. But of course, I'm basically an archaeologist.
Well, let me try to, I'm not going to take that much time. I don't make the charts, I elicit the charts. And the shape of the charts, if you look at the words, they're mirrors. The shape of the chart is in the words itself, and it's a system of rhyming stems and prefixes, suffixes. So the chart itself, they actually haven't usually got in mind, and never that I'm aware of. But as soon as they see it, it's theirs, and they can read it and understand it. So it's not something I'm imposing, and these are not like Morgan's charts. That's a very important difference. And if they would say, well, gee whiz, what's that? I'd say I'm wrong. But they don't say that. They say, you came here to see that? We all know that. And that tells me I'm not wrong.
But on the other hand, why is Abul Hassan here with his bride? Because his surname is Hassan. And all
That's
Bangladesh
not in the chart.
surname Hassan are cousin brothers.
No, they're not. It depends on where you are.
No,
Those are the rules that are attached to the charts. But that's a rule not even in the chart. That's a rule about descent groups. And in Bengal and in Muslim Bengal, there are different notions of descent groups that are
I'm going to
attached to
say
the chart.
thank you and leave.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I was going to ask Tim if we're running way over. Are we okay?
Yeah.
Well, we are getting near the end, but looks like John is insisting that he wants to make sure that to have at least one more question, and certainly if there's somebody else, go ahead, John Gatewood.
You're
You're
muted.
muted.
I was just going to say goodbye and I was doing
Oh.
it.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Adios.
All right. but
Bye-bye, everybody.
this-
Thank you so much.
Is this a, what about verbal gestures and so forth? Are they also, can they be charted?
Not charted, but the ideas that they represent
Uh-huh.
can be elicited,
Okay.
and then you'll see if they form a chart.
Because I was thinking a lot of what you do can also be applied to linguistics, right?
Oh, it is. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Sure.
The frame
Ray?
analysis is a kind of generalized version of what linguists do all the time.
Okay. Ray Scoopin, did you want to say something?
Yes. Hi, Murray. Can you hear me
Hi.
all right? Yeah, as you may recall, I was an undergrad when you were at UCLA,
I recall.
and my roommate was actually your research assistant, Michael Turner. I don't know if you remember.
Oh, really?
him.
Yes.
Yeah. And then also, I'm a good friend of Bill Rittenberg, who did his research in Thailand, and I was preparing to do field work in Thailand also. But I also remember fondly our soul food lunch that we had at the AAA meetings in Atlanta. And we talked about my mentor, Michael Mormon, and his plight
Right.
at UCLA and what was going on there. And well, one of the things I had a question about is I summarized your research on the Green Revolution in Punjab and in my textbooks, and you showed that it was a very successful Green Revolution there. And that was one of the only cases, because everyone else was saying it was a failure. It was a failure. But have you followed up on any of that research at this point in time, and what's going on?
Yes. It's turned into a kind of disaster. They've started growing. I'll send you a paper I wrote on it.
Okay.
What's happened is they've pumped water, too much water, and they're concentrating on growing rice, and it is turning into an ecological disaster.
Oh, wow, that's too bad. That's too bad. Okay, well,
Which is too bad. And the reason is actually organizational. The central government under Indira Gandhi became more and more authoritarian, and they're using the price control and marketing of grain to control, to get political support.
Right.
Successive regimes have done it. And the result is that the farmers are so whatever the agricultural equivalent of a wage slave is.
Oh,
They're not free to grow crops that are sort of naturally appropriate for the region or
yeah,
for their own, for maintaining their own farms.
right.
Uh,
I really enjoyed your talk.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Michael Painter will make you the last one, the last comment.
I was just applauding and to say thank you for the excellent
You're very welcome.
talk and for the discussion afterwards. But what you said made a lot of sense to me, and it's given me some things to think about. So thank you so much.
I can send a copy of the paper to anyone who asks. And it's more coherent than the talk.
Yeah, that would be terrific.
Send it to
Okay, send me an email.
Send it to the listserv.
Okay, yeah, great.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, you mean I should send my paper to the listener? Great idea. That's easy.
Okay.
Send it to Tim.
Yeah, you know, you can, to the ASA listserv, you can post it directly, and if you have any trouble, just let me know and I can get it
Okay,
on there. Okay.
great. Thank you all for coming.
All right. Well, thanks very much, Mary. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk today. Fascinating. And I think that there's lots more to talk about. I know I have lots more questions, but we'll catch up later and we'll get more of those discussions going on this topic and things that are connected.
Anytime.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Murray.
You're welcome. Good to see you, Russ.
This is Russ. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
By the way, Murray,
Yes.
if you don't have access to it, you need to go find the original Two Crows Denies This.
I don't even know about it.
Oh,
I'll
that's
have to look.
Sapir, yeah, who took it from the original Omaha ethnography about how many clans there were in
Oh,
Crete.
yeah.
Two
No,
Crows.
that,
It became
I
a
don't know
famous,
that one, but I know
part
others that are,
of his lecture.
okay.
Two Crows Denies.
I'll remember.
Okay.
Rick, I'm sorry to see your neck.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks very much, everybody. And our next talk will be on October 30th. Phil Stevens will be talking about magic and witchcraft, quite appropriate for Halloween. So thanks, and we'll see you in about a month. Thanks again, Murray. We'll see you later, and I will be
My
posting
pleasure.
the talk online, those who couldn't make it. So we'll talk to you later. Again, thanks a lot, Murray. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you all.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So Tim, I mentioned if we could have some time to talk afterwards, but it was kind of like personal information, so I was wanting to have a private conversation with you.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm not sure about all these other folks who are still here, so
Yeah.
we could do this another time, or maybe they've just not signed out properly, I guess, huh?
Well, I see Jim's not even there right now. I don't know if Ralph is so forth and so forth, but um, so yeah, why don't I'll send you, how about if we talk in about an hour or so, say around 6? Do you have time
Yeah,
then?
yeah,
Okay.
that'll be good.
All right, I'll send you a
The Zoom link?
yeah, Zoom link, okay?
Yeah, yeah. I
Okay.
have Zoom too, so we could go either way. You can do
Okay.
that. That'll be fine.
All right, okay, good.
Thank you.
Talk to you later. See you later. Bye-bye.